So, in spite of the fact that we have a full house here this morning, we only have two audio visual people that were in town today, Carl and myself. And I'm just talking to you, saying meaningless things right now to give Carl a minute, because he's now got to get the live stream going, make sure all the music mics are turned off, make sure the right sound feed is going on, and et cetera, et cetera. I intentionally today did not prepare any PowerPoint slides to show you because I knew that would just be a bridge too far. So it's kind of interesting because last year we took the kids' Bible Bowl team to Reno, Nevada for the conference championship. And we went to the Riverview Seventh-day Adventist Church in Reno. And we got there just as church was ending, and you know, there was one person in the back who was finishing up, buttoning up the recording and all the things that we do for the day. And I said, how do you guys manage? There's basically four parts. There's the video in the house, the video out in the internet, the sound in the house, and the sound out on the internet. And we do a fifth, which is the sound up here on the stage. So you have like five things going on. And I said, how do you guys manage all this stuff? Because we never get it right at Wasatch, because we just, you know, there's always something that doesn't work right. And he goes, well, we have 4 people that do it on Sabbath morning. And I thought, yeah, that's the secret. That is the secret. So if any of you are technically minded or want to be, we would be happy to have you help us. This is always a little bit of a melancholy time of year when we take down the Christmas tree and the decorations. For those of you that are visiting, you might not know that the Wasatch Mountains are a major earthquake fault line. And I see it every year. You probably don't see it, but I have to tell you how I know we're on a major earthquake fault line. One of our 3 angels fell over sometime during the week. She has retired. I can see her skirt up there. Can you see her? Yep, she's fallen over. And this angel right here, every week throughout the Christmas holidays, has rotated ever so slightly to the south and moved that way on the tree. That's how you know when Christmas is over. That's how you know when Christmas is over. And as we enter this time of year, we've already had Tia Tanya talk to us about New Year's resolutions and things, and that's a very common theme. For me, the way I approach New Year's is very different. I'm old, and I've discovered that there's nothing I can do to keep a New Year's resolution. So what I do is I instead end the year setting myself up for the next year. So what I've been doing all year, this is my ritual at the end of the year while I'm working in my home office. I upgrade and patch all my routers and computers. I go through all my spam in my inbox, and I unsubscribe to all the stuff I don't want to get next year. I archive all the email from 2022 off of my computer, so a little over a year ago. I update all my music playlists. I update all the genres on my digital music. I get my life, I get my photos all organized. I get everything incorporated into the library. I get my life so that I am now manageable for the next year. I know that I can't possibly be perfect next year or do anything better, but I at least want to hit it with a little bit cleaner baseline. I think if I was going to say a secret to New Year's resolutions, and you guys have probably already figured this out, but the secret to coming up with a New Year's resolution that actually you keep is to come up with a resolution that's completely consistent with your character already. Right? That would be the best way to have a chance of keeping your New Year's resolution. We don't often do that. If you think about it, what do we often do for New Year's resolutions? We come up with the thing that we know that we failed at over and over and over again, and we say, this year I'm going to do it. right? Last year, Weight Watchers didn't work for me, but this year, Nutrisystem is going to do it. Last year, Peloton, nope, couldn't stick with it. This year, I bought myself an entire year's membership to the gym, paid in cash up front. So this year, it's going to work. And what I've discovered over the years is that all those things I try and wish myself into are things that are inconsistent with my character, and I'm just wishing my character would get better, right? This year, I am going to stick to the budget. So I bought the software to manage the budget, right? So I'm trying to wish myself into something that I'm just not all that oriented to do anyway. And that's why so many New Year's resolutions fail. I've spent a lot of years as a manager of people before I finally realized that the same thing is true about coaching and managing people and getting them to reach a higher level of performance. I used to work for a company that had put a lot of thought and effort into the fact that it had 6 corporate values. And these 6 corporate values were enshrined. They were printed on the back of your employee badge, and everybody knew them and was trained on them. And every year when you sat down with an employee and did performance appraisal of their last year, you were supposed to benchmark it against those values. And you were supposed to say, hey, this is where you really do well with regard to our values, and here's where you can improve with regard to our values. And what I discovered over many, many, many years was that was kind of a cop-out way of managing people because it did not recognize who the person was. So this company that I worked at had a value, a corporate value that was risk-taking. We are a company that takes risks. We're intentional about taking risk. If you work here, you should be a person who's comfortable taking risks. And so it was very easy for me to write performance appraisals for people who are more cautious by nature and say, if you want to improve, if you want to do well here, you need to be better at taking risks. But at the end of the day, that's a character trait. And so what I started to realize was instead of telling people that they had to align with the values that they weren't all that good at, I would be better off saying, you really should accentuate the things that you already are good at. Be exceptional at these 3 because these might not be your personality. And so it took me a while to figure that out, that I could wish that somebody would be fantastic at all 6 corporate values, but that just wasn't a reality because everybody is different as a person. The reality is that everything I've talked about is a setup for, Clement told me what the topic was today that I had to talk about, and he told me I had 10 minutes, and I'm 9 minutes in. So this was all a setup where I was just giving you a little background because I want you to pull out your Bible app on your phone or the Bible out of the pew in front of you, and I want you to go to the New Testament, and I want you to go to 2 Timothy. Get yourself ready, because that's what I'm going to talk about. What I'm really leading up to is there any part of you as a human, is there any part of me as a human that I could say, this is always true about me? Is there anything that you could say, this is always true about me? Put your name in there, I, Emmett. This is always true about Emmett. It never changes. It is always true. I wonder what that would be for you. I can't think of anything for me. I'm just not that good of a person. Okay? I wish there was something that I could say, I am always this. Never have I ever violated that. But what I want to talk to you about today, Clement, he told me the topic today is God's faithfulness, and all the songs we've sung have been about how God's power and faithfulness in our lives enables us. And I want to go to 2 Timothy chapter 2. Now, just a little background on this. Timothy, we can tell from particularly this letter from Paul, but we can tell from both 1 Timothy and 2 Timothy, kind of, that you can paint a picture of Timothy. He was somewhat timid. He was fearful. He was obsessive about his inability to be good at being a pastor. You can tell that because the way Paul writes to him, especially in this book, 2 Timothy, he really is going, Timothy, I got to tell you all the reasons why you can stand strong in your job. This is why you can do this. And this passage that we're going to talk about here, 2 Timothy chapter 2, verses 11 to 13, in a lot of Bibles, it's pulled out almost like it's the verse to a song. I don't know why. But it starts with Paul saying to Timothy, he's already told him, that Paul is willing to suffer death for the gospel. He's willing, and he's kind of encouraging Timothy to say, you got to step into this job, Timothy. You got to be stronger. You got, and here's all the reasons why you can be. And this is what he says in 2 Timothy 2, verses 11 to 13. I'm reading from the Pathfinder Bible Bowl version in the New King James Version. Paul says, he starts out by saying, this is a faithful saying. It's almost like Jesus saying, verily, verily, I say unto you, an emphasis. I'm going to tell you something that is always true, okay? And he goes on and he talks about things that Timothy needs to know. He says, for if we died with him, we shall also live with him. Timothy, you might die for him, but you're also going to live with him. If we endure, we shall also reign with him. If you don't die, you're still going to have to endure because it's not going to be easy. You're going to have to struggle through a lot of things. But the good news is at the end, you'll reign with him. Then Paul switches and he goes to negative. If we deny him, he will also deny us. By the way, straight out of Matthew 10:33. If that's an unpopular sentiment to you, Jesus said it flat out. If anyone who denies me before men, I will deny before the Father. Right? So Paul is right on now theologically, but then he comes to something very, very, very interesting. He says, if we are faithless, what would you expect? Before he said, if we deny him, he will deny us. Now he says, if we are faithless, what would you expect him to say? He will be faithless to us. No, he doesn't say that. He says, if we are faithless, he remains faithful. It's the only one of these where it doesn't match, where he says, no matter what you do, no matter how unfaithful you might be to God, God will be faithful. And then he ends it by saying, here's why. Here's how you can have confidence in this. He says, he cannot deny himself. Now, do you want to put all those pieces together? Why can God not be unfaithful? So that's two negatives. So let's turn that two negatives into a positive. Why is God always faithful? Because it's his character, Tia Tanya. Thank you very much. He cannot deny himself. Most of you have probably never read science fiction books about robots. So I'm not going to ask for volunteers of how many have. But this is one of the things that is a very popular, right? We're only now beginning to live in a world where robots are a reality. Right? Up until now, it's always been theory. There was a guy named Isaac Asimov that wrote a series of books, and he laid down the 3 laws of robotics. And I'm not encouraging you to read this, but the whole theory of robots was, and this is what Hollywood movies always would portray, is that robots were programmed to be perfect, and if you wanted to defeat a robot ever, you had to get it to deny something that was core to its existence. You had to point out to the robot the flaw in its programming, or you had to force it to do something that it was programmed not to do. And if you did that, then the robot's head would explode and the Hollywood actor would win, and everybody would go home happy because the robots had been defeated. That's a little bit like what this is saying about Jesus. It's saying there is no way God can be unfaithful to you. He cannot do it. I hate to say this because it'll sound sacrilegious, but if he did, his head would explode. Okay? I'm sure that's not true in reality, but that's kind of the visual I want you to have of when we say God is faithful, he cannot not be faithful. He cannot. He can deny you. There's a lot of things he can and can't do, but he cannot be unfaithful. So I want to leave you with that today. When Clement gave me this topic last night, I was going through this, and I realized this is a 45-minute sermon because the second part to the sermon is, what is God faithful to? And we'll get to that sometime in the future. For now, with all this rousing music, I felt like I had to just leave this message with you. God cannot be unfaithful to you.